Welcome to the Healthcare Payment Network podcast. Why is paying and getting paid for healthcare so hard? Why is it unaffordable for most Americans? And most importantly, what are we going to do about it? Whether you're a provider or industry professional, ultimately we are all patients. This podcast is a conversation on how we tackle one of the most challenging problems in our society, paying for healthcare. Here we'll discuss new innovations and fresh perspectives from the people working to make paying for healthcare easier and more affordable. Let's dive in.
This is the Healthcare Payment Network podcast. I'm Andy Rellihan, and our guest today is Drew Mercer. We've had some external guests, but Drew is the co-founder and CEO of PayGround. So Drew, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself to our millions of followers?
Well,
We'll get
appreciate you
started.
having me, Andy. It's great to be here. And I've been watching and following the Healthcare Payment Network podcast, of course, and been having some great guests and great conversations. So love having a conversation here with you today. So yeah, just a little bit about myself, background. As you mentioned, co-founder, CEO here at PayGround. Prior to this, been a health tech guy my whole career. So started out selling stuff, and then after getting my MBA, get into more sales leadership, and worked at companies, GE Healthcare, DaVita, and then right prior to PayGround, I was leading a commercial team at Experian Health. And on the personal front, if you follow our story, I've got a tribe at home. So been married to my wonderful wife Tegan for 16 years. Got to think about that, make sure, and 4 kiddos between 11 and 4.
If Tegan is watching, I hope that's accurate.
I do too. Yep. Believe me, yeah, I do too.
So the interesting thing about PayGround, and I've been here a year and a half, is the story, your story, and the story of PayGround is sort of interwoven with your family, right?
That's right.
It's the genesis, the idea, the concept. It's been told many times, and if you followed PayGround at all, you've probably heard Drew's story, but maybe give us the highlight of what it was. So if you haven't heard it, you can hear it here on the podcast, and then take us through how many different systems was it?
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, for those that may been hearing this the first time, I'll keep it brief. But I was working at Experian Health as I mentioned, and just kind of out of the blue, started not feeling so well, and went to the doctor. Got diagnosed pretty quickly with testicular cancer, and thankfully we caught it early, and I was able to stay away from chemo and radiation, and just on a surveillance program for 5 years. But that, of course, was a big shock in its own kind of emotional season. But at that same time, just within a few weeks of each other, the diagnosis, my wife and I had kiddo number 3. And so to your point, just the number of bills that we received, we counted them up at one point, and we received 21 medical bills in the span of 6 weeks. And from health systems where I had the surgery for the cancer stuff, and where my wife had the baby was actually the same health system, but the independent providers that we went to, of course, the anesthesiologist bills were separate. Radiology, laboratory, OBGYN for my wife, urology for me. I mean, just a number of different independent providers. We counted up 13 providers making up those 21 medical bills over a span of just a few weeks.
Yeah. In so much of our conversations that you and I are in, it's
Yeah.
how do we go provide the experience within that one system? But rarely for complex episodes of care is it really just, oh, it's one system, every provider's in the same system, everybody's employed, it's going to work perfectly.
Mm-hmm.
It's not the reality of healthcare today,
It's
right?
not
So
right.
you get through this experience, and instead of focusing on the cancer experience, instead of focusing on your wife's maternity experience, you say, I'm
Mhm.
going to start a payment company, which is
Yeah,
kind of the craziest thing of all of that, right? You think about
right.
the personal care, and the frustration that you took from that was, man, this payment thing is frustrating. So what happened there? You decide you get a clean bill of health, right?
Yep. Yep.
And then you say, I want to go start a payment company.
Yeah, I've always had that kind of entrepreneurial bug in the belly, they say. But for me, I never really thought as me as a founder. Must say, when we received all those bills, I was more concerned about staying alive, especially earlier on when we didn't quite know what the prognosis
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
of the cancer stuff. And so I was more worried about, man, am I gonna live long enough to walk my daughter down the aisle, see my kids graduate from school? It just was a very emotional season for the family, and at that time, I didn't expect to go and start a company following this experience. But as soon as we started seeing all these bills and just the friction of paying them, the light bulb moment was, why can't I use Venmo to pay all these? Venmo was kind of becoming prevalent back in this time. 2018 was the
Yep.
year. And so I was a big fan of Venmo. I'm like, man, really wish I could pay all these bills on Venmo. And that was the light bulb experience that said, this should I should be able to use this in healthcare. And the fact that those capabilities didn't exist was like reason in itself. And of course, following a cancer kind of experience, a lot of people who are cancer survivors know you have a new lease on life. If this went a different direction and I didn't live through this, what did I leave on the table? And you want to live life to the fullest. You want to take all the risks. And so it was just kind of like a convergence of all these realities that led to us taking a risk and saying, "Hey, let's go do something meaningful. Let's turn the model upside down, empower consumers, individuals, families like the one I have, to go and manage all their medical bills in one place."
Yeah. And if we backtrack a little bit, just half a step, there are ways you can use digital wallets in healthcare today, but on a unit by unit basis, meaning I go to each portal, it still is wrought with friction. It is not
Exactly.
a consumer driven experience where the world orients around the consumer,
Right.
right?
Yep.
And that is the core difference where you say, okay, how do we get that?
Yeah.
And so, the interesting thing about healthcare is we have this drive at PayGround to go say, how can we be fully focused on the consumer, the patient?
Hmm.
But in many ways, it doesn't feel like healthcare is there, right? Every turn is, well, what does it mean for the provider? And
Hmm.
that's super important. Healthcare is, organizations or businesses, they run on thin margins. They're constantly being pulled in directions around rate cuts and things that are very, very much out of their control. How do we balance that as a company? What's the balancing act that we play? Because we have this pull towards what we felt would compelled us to come to PayGround or start PayGround.
Right.
And we have this reality of, hey, providers are really struggling too. We have to really empathize with providers as well.
That's right. Yeah. Providers, and I think why you don't see too, they say healthcare is well behind other industries around innovation. I mean, it makes sense. I mean, to your point, that providers are under certain pressures that a lot of other industries aren't, regulatory probably more so than other industries with HIPAA, FDA guidelines, et cetera. And then just the, patient safety always being at the top of the list, more so than most anything. And so, to answer your question, how does PayGround kind of come alongside this and innovate in a very restrictive environment? I think the answer to that is really just generating strong consumer demand. And I think as an industry, healthcare industry, we've gone through this era of consumerism of healthcare for a few years now. But we really haven't, I don't think, have really, as a healthcare community, done a good job on the financial side of that. We call it interoperability of sharing information and having things work together. And that's where I think our biggest opportunity, of course, here is at PayGround, is to just improve the payment experience so that there isn't those friction points of, confusing billing cycles, not having optionality when it comes to payments, payment plans, et cetera.
And y- I agree wholeheartedly. Are there examples to pull from? Obviously in payments, we see it as a huge gap, and
Yeah.
we're laser focused on fixing that. But are there other examples where we could pull from and say, okay, that's where, maybe in healthcare or not, right? How do we go draw on it to go help providers realize, hey, there's a benefit to really centering around the consumer?
Yeah, beyond improving just consumer experience, because I think that is a magnet to just generating, a market adoption for what we're building. Providers want to get paid. I mean, they're business owners. They are experiencing rate cuts as far as reimbursement. And so that's what I think the beauty of what we're building here, as far as, the healthcare payment network is, as we're successful, all boats rise. Patients win, better experience. Providers win, they're getting paid more faster. And it's just, taking kind of the inefficiencies that exist today. And that's what I think people really gravitate towards what we're building because it just makes sense. I can't tell you how often somebody says, "Tell me about PayGround," and I give them the elevator pitch of what we're building, and they're like, "Man, it's crazy. Nobody's thought of that before." And I'm like, "I know, me too. I can't believe it either. That's
Yeah,
why we're doing what we're doing."
yeah, yeah, and it's fun having those conversations because we talk to other technology vendors, partners of ours,
Yeah,
prospective partners of ours, and we walk them through what we're doing and how we're trying to do it, and they're like, it fires them up. And
yeah,
then you go tell that story to our clients and what it can do, and we're also still in this stage where we're saying, hey, help us build this, right? This
right.
the end, the end of the road isn't paved. So help us build this story out, right?
Yeah, that's right.
And so as we kind of look at that, what would you say, your founder, you're many years into this.
Mhm.
We've we've gotten up, several thousand locations on the PayGround platform. What's success look like
Yeah,
at a baseline level? What your baseline post has probably moved from where you started, right?
sure.
Hey,
Yeah, yeah,
could we collect $1, right?
yeah,
To what's baseline now for a success measure for you?
yeah. I love this question. I get excited and passionate about this. I would probably put it into three buckets, and one I'm glad to say we could put a green check box on, and that is the empowerment to an individual family to manage and pay all their medical bills in one place. So you know this, Andy, but for those that may
Yep.
not, the part of
Yeah.
your listening audience here is you can download the PayGround app for free on the iOS and Android app stores and pay any medical bill. That in itself is innovative. I didn't have a tool like that back when my family went through this stuff. You can download the app. If your provider's in our network, your bill's automatically going to show up and you can pay it with one tap. If your providers aren't on our network, they may have not heard of PayGround yet. That doesn't stop you from paying it. You just take a picture of your bill, pay, and then we submit payment to that provider, at worst with a paper check. And there's some other means in which we do that efficiently. So that first bucket, Dunzo, we like to say here, checkbox. And so then you get into this kind of like next term goal, and that is building this network. And so going out and, Andy, you could probably answer this better than me as our chief commercial officer, but growing the network, getting hospital health systems to join our platform, clinics, every level of healthcare, small, medium, large. And by doing that, it's really this, momentum gainer because the more providers are going to be invoicing via our platform, more texts, more emails, more paper statements to their patients that then create more digital wallets. Patients love what we're building. They start talking to their friends and family. Providers learn about it, and it's this network effect we like to call it. And I think that we're in that season now, and we're quite a ways away from putting the checkbox on this near term kind of goal of ours, but we're
Yeah.
well on our way, as you mentioned, several
Yeah.
thousand sites across all 50 states. And so then, I call it our moonshot, which is what does success look like if we're wildly successful? And to me, that's when like I almost get the chills because I get pumped thinking about it. And that's really changing the way healthcare is paid for, the funding mechanisms of healthcare. I don't think anyone in this country can say, the way that I pay for healthcare makes a ton of sense and it's working great, right? Like it's just there's a lot of brokenness in our system, and insurance is very imperfect around healthcare. And so, one thing that gets me, again, a lot of things get me pumped up around this, but a little bit afar from where we are today, but I think we have an angle at getting there, is as we get patients and providers on the same payment platform, that allows for opportunities for direct contracts between provider and patient. And so we'll kind of flush this out as we get there. Don't want to share too much of our strategy here to the open world, but that is something that I think is a big opportunity for us as we're successful.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, the interesting thing about that second box that you talked
Mhm.
about, and we say we're well on our way, is I think what we've uncovered, and we had this concept of, hey, your family has all these independent providers, and man, if we could connect the community amongst the independent providers in the hospital, wouldn't that be great? And then you
Yeah,
find out, and you go start having conversations. They say, well, it's four bills even within one system,
yeah,
right?
yep,
It's dysfunction. There's still so much work to be done within the single system that we can go use our network concepts to solve a lot of friction without them having to go deploy a lot of capital on new technology projects.
right.
That's a huge opportunity that we have within the second bucket to go make impacts tomorrow,
Yeah,
right? And so you start to go do that where we can add value in the very near term, which gets more patients, which gets more providers, and the ball just keeps rolling down the hill. That's really, really exciting too.
yep,
I always, you always assume, oh, it's all on one single system. It's like, well, is it really? Or
right,
is there all these kind of disparate systems? These IDNs have gotten so big that to get on one single system is nearly impossible now. And
right.
we can help, connect the dots. Um, on your a really bad day is coming in via the helicopter, stay in the
Yeah.
hospital for several weeks, and then you're in rehab for many, many
Hmm.
months. And how many bills are you getting within that one kind of episode of care?
Right.
Um, we can help certainly make the experience better and expose, better options for affordability at the same time.
Yep.
That that earns us the right to get to the moonshot, which
That's
is
right.
really, really cool.
Yep.
Yeah. So if we kind of have that three checkbox, and
Yeah.
we'll call ourselves at 1.5 ish,
I like it.
right?
Yep. I'll take it.
What do we need? What's the focus point without getting so into the weeds? The
Sure.
focus point. How do you keep we get pulled in a lot of different directions. We get asked a lot of different questions. How do we stay focused to achieve our goal?
Yeah. Yeah. Good. Really good question. I probably would put that, two sides to that. You have your kind of internal piece, and then you have your external piece, meaning go to market strategy. And of course, the internal piece, you got to have vision, you got to keep the team aligned and having, measurable goals, et cetera. On the go to market side, which I think, maybe is the question, is there's going to be multiple things that get us to the goal line. And so in healthcare, it's it's there's a lot of different silos. I think a lot of people in healthcare like to say, and so we look at it as if we can have a focus around hospital and health systems, small kind of ambulatory clinics, and then partners, right? Partners being other healthcare service companies that have clinics and hospitals as clients, but they don't do payments as their core business. But we partner with them, they start maybe offering a payment component via PayGround, and then everybody could win there. And so that to me if we could get three legs of the stool around uh, our strategy towards clinics, hospital and health systems, and then partners, craft that story, provide value, we're going to be wildly successful.
Yeah, no, I agree with that as well. In a similar way, and these things seem very interlinked.
Hmm.
Culture.
Yeah.
How if in order to go and hit our goals,
Yep.
right? The culture of the organization is so important. And so from the founding of PayGround to where we're at today to how, I just being with you in meetings every week,
Hmm.
family and focus on family. You're very intentional about that. You're intentional that making sure we are focused on that, which is good as well. How do you maintain that as playground
Mm.
grows, right? We will
Yeah.
continue to add providers. That is very, very clear. And when you look at
Yeah. Well, we got Andy Rellihan as our chief commercial officer.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Right, sure. But we're going to grow.
Yeah.
It doesn't, it feels inevitable, right?
Yeah.
The growth rate of Playground is getting bigger and bigger. How do we keep the culture of family centered,
Yep.
right? Feeling small,
Hmm.
agile, action oriented. How do you keep that?
Yeah. Yeah. I think first and foremost, what we're building drives that. Payground is, I like to call revolutionary. And if we get people aligned to what we're building, what we're delivering to our culture, which is, that single place to manage and pay all medical bills, which takes away a lot of pain points for Americans. Um, there's huge delivery in that. And so waking up every day, coming to work, it becomes missional in a lot of ways. And so you're building brick by brick something incredibly meaningful that when you hang it up at the end of your career, I would like to think that building Payground was probably the best, the thing that someone did. That's my hope at least. And so I think waking up and having that mission in mind and at the heart is core. And tied to that, very importantly, is just the people. And it takes, I think, a special type of person to want to contribute to something that is that meaningful. And so, we're very selective on who we bring in here, to the business, of course. And so it's, to me, you got to have the right heart, but you got to have, the right skill set as well. And that's very, I think, rare to find, but thankfully we've got some great folks.
Yeah, and I think, you know, it's easy to take for granted that every every organization is mission driven,
Yeah.
right? There are some that it's like bottom line
Yep.
driven, right? And to say, hey, I'm working for something that is aspiring to make a bigger impact and that you can have your fingerprint on that. Um, Sometimes you don't really know it until you leave and you go somewhere else and you realize, oh, it's not all
Right.
that, right? And
Yeah.
and so, it's kind of incumbent on us as leaders to go say, how do we go continue to carry that message forward, right? On a day
Right.
by day basis, because some days it's hard. And,
Yep.
and to go build what we're building is not an easy task. And so, but I think it's so important to go say, okay, we can't lose sight of what the goal is. You can have a bad day, things go wrong, but how do we go keep our eye on really what we want to go do? And it
Right.
makes getting up the next day and the next day and the next day worth it. Right.
Yep. Yep.
So so what is something that has surprised you since you started PayGround?
Mm.
What's something that surprised you about, in any aspect, starting a company? It doesn't have to
Yeah.
be PayGround specific, but what's something that surprised you or what surprised you the most?
Yeah. I mean, I think being that this is my first rodeo, my first founding experience, and I've been in leadership before, at other places, but here having just that experience of giving someone opportunity to go own their lane is something that's been really surprising for me. And what I mean by that is, someone that may come to the business extremely well qualified, has years of experience, maybe 20, 30 years of experience. And on paper, they're great. They're perfect for the gig. And it turns out, unfortunately, in a few circumstances, that they weren't. And so I think for me, one of the biggest surprises is the more inexperienced I actually prefer. I think the right kind of teammate and chops that we're looking for is grit and someone just hungry to go build something cool. And that's what PayGround is ultimately comprised of. And we try to kind of weed out quickly the folks that we find maybe more on the latter of what I just explained. But that's been just transparently, me, I'm a straight shooter. That's been probably the biggest surprise for me. Is just I wish I kind of learned that sooner.
Yeah. It when you have some, you can have a playbook, you can have, but when it all breaks down, or Mike Tyson, everyone's got a plan until somebody gets punched in the face,
Yeah.
right? Like,
Yeah.
it's like who's getting back up and just
Yeah.
going through and fighting through to go find the answer to the problem that we don't exactly have the answer to, right?
Right. Right.
And we've got a number of those people on the team right now, which is awesome, right?
Yeah.
And you can see them, fighting every day.
Yep.
Um, one of them might have set up this podcast.
That's right. Agreed.
Um,
Agreed.
so as we close here, prediction time,
Yeah.
right? When it's all said and done, PayGround will have what impact on healthcare? What's your prediction?
I would say we are the meeting place for healthcare payments. I say payground, right? It's a play on words on the word playground, which is a physical location. And as we're talking here on the healthcare payment network piece, network and place synonymous. And so the impact that payground has is really removing silos, removing friction, and providing consumers, individuals, as I mentioned, families, that single place to manage and pay all their medical bills. Like doesn't exist outside of PayGround today, and I think it's ours to win here.
Great. I'm excited to be on the journey. I'm glad
Yeah,
I took
I'm grateful you are,
the
Andy.
leap to be
Yeah,
on the journey, and we got a lot of work to do, but
yeah,
it's fun work nonetheless. So Drew,
yeah.
thank you so much for joining us. Special edition of CEO co-founder Drew Mercer on the Healthcare Payment Network
And
podcast.
Andy, I appreciate, love being here. If we do another one of these down the road, I think you and me on a lake somewhere on a deck,
What
those
about at
two
a
guys
bar?
at a bar, we could do that too. But I just think of us, on the end of a deck. You've seen those like those videos of two dads doing dad jokes. I think,
Yeah, yeah,
V2
yeah.
of this could be
Yes. On location, right? Not
exactly.
via the web. Yes,
Yeah,
exactly. We'll have to plan that out. All right.
sounds good. All right, thanks, Andy.
Thanks for tuning in to the Healthcare Payment Network podcast. We hope you found today's discussion insightful and valuable. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share this episode with your network. Stay connected, and we'll see you next time as we continue to explore the future of healthcare payments.